The Galactic Council had never been faced with such uncertainty before. In the vast expanse of space, it was not often that new threats or unknown wonders appeared. The Council Chambers, a massive structure floating in the middle of a bustling space station, were filled with tense murmurs. The holographic projections of various alien representatives flickered above their round table. Across the galaxy, hundreds of planets had their eyes fixed on this unprecedented report. An urgent transmission had arrived from a planet known to be one of the most dangerous in the galaxy. This was no ordinary world. This was home to Goreth, the apex predator, a creature so feared that entire civilizations had sent their best warriors and scientists, only to meet their demise. No one, not even the most advanced alien species, had been able to capture or tame Goreth. The beast had slaughtered countless would-be conquerors, leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. The transmission's message was simple, but it sent ripples of shock through the council. A human has tamed Goreth. The room fell silent as the news echoed in the minds of the alien leaders. They stared at the hologram in disbelief. How could this be? A human, an insignificant species by their standards, had succeeded where the most sophisticated civilizations had failed. Was it a trick? A misunderstanding? Or had the impossible truly happened? At the center of the council room, the face of Commander Zarlok, a towering alien from the Vrax race, twisted in confusion. His race was known for their intelligence and technological prowess, yet even they had been unable to subdue Goreth. He glanced toward the leader of the Galactic Council, High Commander Ryle, who was equally taken aback. "This cannot be," Ryle muttered under his breath. "No species has ever succeeded. Not even the Vrax, not the Zolani, not the Kilkari." As the room buzzed with whispers and accusations of trickery, Ryle pressed a button on the Council's main console. The holographic projection shifted, and now the image was no longer a simple report. It was a live feed from the planet in question. The camera zoomed in on the figure standing in the center of a jungle, surrounded by towering trees and dangerous wildlife. There, in the heart of the wilderness, stood a human, a soldier, his armor gleaming under the light of the distant sun. Beside him, towering over him like a mountain, was Goreth, the monstrous predator. The human stood tall, as if unafraid, facing the creature that had torn apart entire armies. He was calm, methodical, with a look in his eyes that told the story of a man who knew his purpose. The alien leaders watched as the man spoke softly, a communication device in his ear. He gestured, and the massive beast, once a symbol of terror, crouched down to his level. The connection between man and beast was unlike anything the Council had ever witnessed. It was as if the predator, after years of dominating its world, was now bowing to the human's will. Zarlok slammed his fist onto the table. "This is impossible. The human species is not capable of this," he shouted. His voice echoed in the chamber, but no one disagreed. They all watched in awe and confusion. The very idea that a human, so primitive in comparison to their own species, could tame a creature like Goreth was something none of them had ever anticipated. High Commander Ryle's face remained calm, but inside, his thoughts raced. If a human can do this, what else might they be capable of? The Council had long believed that their superiority was unquestioned. They controlled vast star systems, their technology was unrivaled, and their military might was considered unbeatable. But now, in the blink of an eye, everything was in question. Could the humans have some hidden potential they had yet to uncover? What if they were more dangerous than anyone could have imagined? As the scene continued to unfold, Captain John, the human leading this unprecedented mission, was introduced. The camera zoomed in on his face. Captain John was no ordinary soldier. He was a man of immense strength and intelligence. His reputation had preceded him. He was known not just as a warrior, but as a scientist. His understanding of alien ecosystems, animals, and the human psyche made him the perfect candidate for this mission. He was the one who had volunteered to go to the planet, to face the apex predator, and to try the impossible. The council saw John's confidence through the live feed. They saw the way he interacted with his team, issuing calm orders and preparing his strategy. It was clear that this human was no ordinary soldier. He was a leader, a tactician, and most importantly, a man driven by the desire to prove that humanity could not be underestimated. And now, as the hologram flickered and changed angles, they saw him stepping forward, directly into the jungle, preparing for his first encounter with Gorath. Suspense filled the air as the camera shifted to show the team gearing up. Each member of Captain John's crew was equipped with state-of-the-art technology, cloaking devices that rendered them invisible to the beast's keen senses, AI drones that hovered silently, scanning the environment for threats, and powerful weapons designed to deal with creatures far stronger than anything humans had ever faced. They were prepared for the worst, but they were also ready for the fight of their lives. As the camera panned over the dense jungle, the council saw the first signs of the beast, the broken trees, the claw marks in the ground, and the distant growl that echoed through the landscape. Captain John's team moved swiftly and silently, but the tension was palpable. Every step they took was calculated, every sound analyzed. The feeling of dread grew thicker with each passing second. They were about to face an apex predator in its own domain, a creature whose very existence was built on domination. Back in the council chambers, the alien leaders watched intently, their faces a mix of curiosity and fear. They knew this mission could be a turning point. If this human succeeded, it would not just be a victory for Earth. It could change the power dynamics of the entire galaxy. Would the human succeed where countless others had failed? Or would this be the final mission for Captain John and his crew? The countdown to the mission's climax continued, and with every passing second, the council grew more anxious. They could feel the weight of what was about to unfold. This mission could either prove that humanity was a species capable of rising to great heights, or it could show that humans, despite their strength, were simply another species destined to fail. As the feed neared its climax, the camera zoomed in on Captain John's determined face. His eyes locked onto the massive creature ahead, his hand gripping his weapon with steady confidence. His voice came through the transmission, calm and clear. This is humanity's moment. The final seconds ticked away, and the suspense reached a boiling point. Would he tame the beast? Would humanity prove itself worthy of a place among the stars? And then the screen went black. The council was left in stunned silence. The room was heavy with anticipation. They knew the outcome of this mission could very well change the course of history. The fate of humanity and the balance of power in the galaxy hung in the balance. The countdown to the mission had ended, but the real question remained: would the impossible become possible? The uncertainty lingered in the air, and the council knew that whatever happened next, the galaxy would never be the same again. Captain John and his team descended toward the hostile planet's surface, the anticipation of the mission weighing heavily on their shoulders. They had prepared for weeks, equipped with the latest technology that humanity could muster. But as the landing craft cut through the thick, ominous atmosphere, they knew that technology alone might not be enough to survive here. The planet was known for its deadly terrain, unpredictable weather, and most terrifying of all, the apex predator, Gorath. The surface below them was a dark, desolate wasteland of jagged rocks and dense, toxic fog. Mountains loomed in the distance, casting long shadows over the land. The air was thick with a sense of danger, as if the planet itself was alive, watching, waiting. The crew exchanged nervous glances, their eyes betraying their unease. No one knew exactly what they were up against. Gorath's nature was still a mystery, and their mission was far from guaranteed. As the landing craft touched down with a soft thud, the crew immediately went into action. Captain John, ever calm and collected, surveyed the scene through the craft's viewing panel. "All right, team, gear up. We need to find Gorath and get this over with." His voice was steady, though the tension in the air was palpable. He was a seasoned soldier, But even he couldn't ignore the fact that they were about to face the most dangerous creature in the galaxy. Each member of the crew donned their high-tech gear. The cloaking devices were activated first. Each soldier vanished from sight, their forms blending seamlessly with the surroundings. Their armor glowed faintly, providing minimal visibility to the naked eye. Eye-guided drones, smaller and faster than anything the creatures on this planet had ever seen, buzzed overhead, scanning for any sign of danger. Energy shields were deployed, creating an invisible force field around them that would absorb the first few hits of any attacks. But no matter how advanced their equipment was, the landscape was alien, hostile, and full of surprises. The crew moved cautiously through the terrain, their footsteps silent on the thick, spongy ground. The planet's atmosphere felt oppressive, the air thick with the scent of decay and the low hum of distant, unseen life forms. Every rustle of the wind, every shift in the shadows, made their hearts race with the awareness of how vulnerable they truly were. Captain John led the team forward, his eyes scanning the horizon. The AI drones sent constant updates to his helmet, which displayed a map of the area with multiple heat signatures. "We're getting closer," he muttered. "Stay sharp." Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath their feet. The team froze, the tension rising to a fever pitch. The drones overhead hummed louder, detecting movement in the dense underbrush ahead. A shadow passed over them. And then, a massive roar shook the air. The ground cracked open, and out of the fog emerged the silhouette of Goreth. At that moment, all the advanced technology in the world seemed useless. Gorath was a creature of nightmare, its massive form dwarfing the humans. It stood at least 20 feet tall, its dark, sinewy muscles rippling beneath scaly, armor-like skin. The creature's eyes glowed with an unnatural yellow hue, and its claws were like jagged knives, capable of tearing through metal. Its roar was deafening, shaking the very air around them. The team barely had time to react before Gorath charged. Captain John didn't hesitate. "Move," he yelled, pushing his team forward. The cloaking devices flickered as they sprinted through the dense foliage, their shields absorbing the first hits from Gorath's massive claws. The creature was relentless, its speed and power far exceeding anything they had expected. The energy shields flared with each strike, but the team was struggling to keep up. John's heart raced as he analyzed the situation. The beast was too fast, too strong. Their weapons, though powerful, couldn't do enough damage. Gorath's thick hide was resistant to the energy blasts. "We need a plan. Now," John barked. He reached into his gear and pulled out a small device, an eye-driven tracking system that would allow him to scan Gorath's movements in real time. The device beeped as it processed the data, providing a weak, grainy map of the creature's position. It was then that John realized they were outmatched. There was no way to overpower the creature with brute force alone. It would take more than technology to win this battle. He needed to outthink it. "Get to the high ground," John ordered, leading the team toward a jagged cliff ahead. The team scrambled up, trying to stay ahead of the beast. The air was filled with the sound of Gorath's furious roars as it followed, its claws scraping against the rocks. The team barely made it to the top in time, with Gorath charging directly beneath them, but the brief respite didn't last long. The creature wasn't deterred by the terrain. It was relentless. Captain John looked at his team, eyes sharp. "We're not just going to fight it. We need to make it believe we're not its prey," he said, formulating a strategy on the fly. "Prepare to use the pheromone disruptors. We'll confuse its senses, throw it off balance." The pheromone disruptors were an experimental piece of tech designed to interfere with the olfactory systems of apex predators. If Gorath relied on its sense of smell to track and hunt, this could give them the edge they needed. The team spread out, each member deploying the disruptor into the air. The chemicals began to spread, creating an invisible cloud that would mask their scent. But Gorath wasn't just a predator of physical strength. It was also an intelligent creature, honed by years of survival. The moment the disruptors activated, the beast hesitated. For a moment, it seemed confused, its massive head swiveling as it tried to pinpoint the human's location. It snarled, a low, guttural sound that sent a chill down their spines. The tension in the air was thick, almost suffocating. As John observed the beast's reaction, he realized that his initial instincts had been right. Gorath wasn't just a mindless killer, it was strategic, calculating. It was a predator capable of outthinking its prey, which meant that brute force alone would not work. He would need to use the creature's own intelligence against it. But before he could finish his thoughts, the ground shook once more. Gorath, seemingly snapping out of its confusion, let out a terrifying roar and charged toward them again, this time with even more speed and fury. The team scattered, narrowly avoiding the beast's massive claws as they jumped to safety. Gorath was on the attack once more, and this time, it was playing for keeps. Captain John's heart raced. The team's safety was at risk, but so was their mission. They had to stop the beast, or all of humanity's efforts would be in vain. His mind raced as the creature closed in. Would they be able to outsmart it, or was this the end for them? The cliffhanger hung in the air as Gorath charged once more, the team on the brink of being overwhelmed. The story of the human species against the apex predator had only just begun, and already the stakes were higher than ever. The battle for survival had begun. Captain John and his team were deep in the dense jungle, their every step tense and filled with urgency. Gorath was on the hunt, its monstrous presence a looming shadow over them. The once pristine surroundings were now a battleground, a jungle torn apart by the chaos of their fight. Trees exploded with the sound of energy blasts, their trunks splintering as Gorath's enormous claws slashed through the thick foliage. The air was thick with the stench of burnt vegetation and the metallic tang of weapons fire. The team's advanced technology was their only advantage, but it felt insufficient in the face of the predator's raw power. Energy shields crackled under the weight of Gorath's attacks, their glowing force fields flickering as they struggled to absorb the immense pressure. Captain John's tactical training kicked in as he barked orders to his crew, their movements fluid and coordinated despite the overwhelming danger. "Stay together," John shouted, his voice sharp over the roar of the beast. "Keep your distance and focus on mobility." But the creature was relentless. It moved with terrifying speed, its massive body crashing through the jungle with a force that sent shockwaves through the ground. Despite the team's use of cloaking devices, Gorath could sense their presence, tracking them with an almost unnatural accuracy. The heat from their bodies and the noise of their weapons made it impossible to remain undetected for long. One of the soldiers, Bonner, moved ahead to cover the team, his energy rifle firing in bursts to distract the creature. The powerful blast struck Gorath's hide, but the shots barely phased it. The creature turned, its eyes glowing with fury, and lunged at Bonner with a speed that no one could have anticipated. "Bonner, no!" John yelled, his heart skipping a beat as he watched the soldier fight for his life. Bonner's energy shield flared brightly, but it was no match for Gorath's claws. The soldier was knocked backward, his body slamming into a tree as his shield shattered. Before John could react, Gorath was upon him, the beast's claws tearing through the air. Bonner's death was swift, but his sacrifice was not in vain. As Gorath turned to continue its assault on the team, the other soldiers were able to regroup and take advantage of the brief distraction. But the loss of Bonner was felt deeply by the team. His bravery had bought them precious seconds, and now they had to make those seconds count. "Keep moving," Captain John ordered through clenched teeth, his voice strained with anger and grief. He knew the mission had taken a personal turn. It was no longer just about capturing Gorath. It was about survival, about honoring Bonner's sacrifice. The battle raged on, and John's mind raced for a plan. The creature was powerful, and the human team was at a disadvantage. Their weapons, though technologically advanced, were ineffective against the beast's natural armor. Their cloaking devices, though useful for brief periods, couldn't guarantee safety. They needed to fight smarter, not harder. John ducked under a massive swipe from Gorath's claws, the ground shaking as the claws struck the earth. His team was scattered, but they were not giving up. The fight had taken on a new intensity, one that pushed them to the edge of their limits. They were fighting for their lives, but more than that, they were fighting to prove something. They were fighting for humanity's honor and the memory of Bonner's sacrifice. As Gorath turned to charge again, Captain John made his move. He activated the team's last resort weapon, a high-frequency sonic pulse that could disrupt the creature's senses. It was a risky move, but it was their only hope. John raised the device, his hand steady despite the chaos surrounding him. With a deep breath, he pressed the button. The pulse emitted a high-pitched sound, almost inaudible to the human ear, but to Gorath, it was like a shockwave of pain. The creature froze mid-charge, its head jerking back as its sensitive hearing was overwhelmed by the frequency. It howled in agony, stumbling back into the jungle, disoriented. "This is our chance," John shouted, signaling to his team. "Push forward." The crew moved quickly, using the opportunity to close the gap between them and Gorath. But even with the creature disoriented, the odds were still against them. They were battered and bruised, and their supplies were running low. Gorath was regaining its bearings quickly, its rage making it more dangerous than ever. John took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. It was then that he realized what they had to do. The fight wasn't just about technology. It was about survival, about using their environment, and their wits to outmaneuver the beast. They had to turn the tables. The creature let out another deafening roar and charged once more, but this time, Captain John didn't retreat. He stood his ground, his eyes locked on the beast as it closed the distance between them. With one final command, he signaled to the team. "Now, use the traps." The crew had set up a series of traps earlier in the battle, camouflaged and waiting for the right moment. As Gorath barreled toward John, he ducked out of the way, narrowly avoiding the creature's deadly claws. In the split second that followed, Gorath tripped over one of the traps, a net of high tensile wire that had been cleverly disguised in the foliage. The wire tightened around the creature's legs, bringing it to the ground with a crash. For a brief moment, Gorath was stunned. The human team rushed forward, using the distraction to launch a series of precision strikes. Energy weapons, aimed for the weak spots in the creature's armor, hit their mark. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time, it felt like they were gaining the upper hand. Captain John, his heart still racing from the chaos of the battle, stood tall despite the exhaustion. The team was battered, bruised, and grieving, but they had one thing that Gorath didn't: determination. They would survive, no matter the cost. As Gorath struggled against the traps, its roars filling the air, the team closed in. John's mind was clear, his focus sharp. They had one chance, and he wouldn't let it slip away. He looked at his team, their faces grim but resolute. "Finish this," he said quietly, and with that, the final confrontation began. The battle was far from over, but humanity had proven that, against all odds, they could tame the apex predator. The odds were stacked against them, but the human spirit had never been stronger. The battle was over, but the war for Gorath's submission had just begun. Captain John stood at the edge of the clearing, staring at the massive form of the beast, now lying still on the jungle floor. His heart was still racing from the brutal combat they had just endured, but there was no time to rest. His team, the remaining soldiers, were exhausted, battered, and emotionally scared from the loss of their comrade, Bonner. The air around them was heavy with the aftermath of destruction, the smell of burning vegetation still thick in the air. John's eyes moved to Gorath, the beast that had terrorized them since the very first moment they set foot on this hostile planet. Its hulking form, covered in dark, thick scales, now lay motionless, though its chest still rose and fell with labored breaths. The creature had been brought to the ground, but it was far from tamed. In the midst of the battle, John had seen the beast for what it was, a creature of pure instinct, driven by its own survival. It wasn't evil or malevolent. It was simply doing what it had been born to do. John knew, as a soldier and a scientist, that this was not just about killing the beast or defeating it. It was about understanding it. Gorath wasn't just an apex predator. It was a creature that had its own way of living, its own fears and instincts. The team gathered around John, their faces filled with weariness and sorrow. Bonner's death weighed heavily on them, and the atmosphere was somber. But even in the face of tragedy, they knew their mission was not yet over. Gorath was still alive, still a threat, but it was also their greatest challenge. The question wasn't whether they could defeat the beast, it was whether they could tame it, bring it under their control. Captain John activated the device on his wrist, a communication tool designed to interface with the creature's mind. The device emitted a low hum, and a soft blue light flickered. The machine was designed to translate thoughts and signals, allowing humans to communicate with alien life forms or creatures whose language was beyond their understanding. This was humanity's only chance to bridge the gap between them and Gorath. As John approached the creature, the others hesitated, knowing that any sudden movement could trigger an attack. They watched as John knelt beside Gorath, his face soft with concentration. He didn't view the beast as a threat anymore. He saw it as a puzzle, a creature that needed to be understood. He gently placed his hand on the ground near Gorath's head, the device glowing brighter as it synced with the creature's brainwaves. For a moment, nothing happened. The air was thick with tension. Gorath's eyes flickered, its massive pupils narrowing as the creature fought against the invasive signal. But John didn't pull away. He didn't flinch. He was determined. Slowly, Gorath's body relaxed, its breathing becoming less erratic. It wasn't tamed yet, but it was responding. The device worked as intended, allowing John to communicate with the beast on a basic instinctual level. For the first time, John could feel the creature's emotions, its fear and its confusion. Gorath didn't understand why it had been attacked, why these humans were here, or why it was being controlled. John's mind drifted to Bonner, his fallen comrade, the man who had sacrificed himself to give them this chance. The pain of Bonner's death surged in John's chest, and it was this pain that fueled his determination. He couldn't fail, not now, not when they had come so far. Bonner had believed in this mission. He had believed that humanity could succeed where other civilizations had failed. Now, John had to prove it. Just as the connection seemed to solidify, Gorath's body tensed. A low growl rumbled in its throat, and before anyone could react, it lunged at John, its massive jaws snapping open in a deadly arc. The beast's instincts had kicked in, and for a brief moment, all the progress John had made seemed to unravel. Captain John's heart raced, but he wasn't afraid. He had spent years studying animal behavior, learning how to anticipate and outmaneuver dangerous creatures. He had been trained for moments like this. With a swift movement, he activated a pulse from the device, sending a high-frequency wave directly into Gorath's brain. The creature howled in pain, its mind overwhelmed by the signal. But it wasn't just pain, it was confusion. Gorath didn't understand why it was being forced into submission. John's voice was calm but firm as he spoke, his words directed at the beast, not the crew. "You don't have to fight. You don't have to fear us," he said softly, his voice steady. "We're not your enemies. You are not alone." The words seemed to cut through the chaos, reaching the beast's confused mind. Slowly, Gorath's aggression began to subside. Its body trembled, not from the device's signal, but from the realization that it no longer needed to fight. It was trapped, but it was not helpless. It could still make a choice. Captain John's hand hovered near Gorath's massive head. He could feel the heat radiating from the creature's body, could sense the residual anger and fear still thrumming beneath the surface. But there was something else, a flicker of understanding. The team watched in stunned silence as Captain John, without hesitation, made the final gesture. With one last command to the device, he forced Gorath to kneel. The creature resisted, but the command was clear. It was a moment of victory for humanity, not through force, but through understanding and sheer willpower. The beast's roar echoed through the jungle, but it was no longer a roar of defiance. It was a roar of submission. The once fearsome Gorath, the apex predator of the galaxy, had been tamed. The team let out a collective breath, their bodies slumping with exhaustion and relief. The fight was over, but the real victory was just beginning. John stood tall, his gaze never leaving the creature. He had done it. Humanity had done it. "We've won," John said, his voice quiet but filled with pride. The team gathered around, their faces lit by the dim glow of the device still active in John's hand. They had faced the impossible and triumphed. Against all odds, they had tamed the beast that no one else had been able to control. In that moment, John knew that the human spirit was stronger than any force in the universe. They weren't just survivors. They were conquerors. The news spread like wildfire across the galaxy. The Galactic Council, a body of the most powerful alien species from every corner of the universe, had just witnessed something they thought impossible. A human, Captain John, had tamed the mighty Gorath, the apex predator of a distant, hostile planet. No other species, no other warrior, had ever been able to achieve such a feat. Yet there it was, clear and undeniable evidence that humanity had done what others thought could never be done. The broadcast reached the council chambers, where representatives of countless alien races gathered to discuss matters of galactic importance. As the video feed played, showing Captain John standing victorious, with Gorath kneeling in submission, the council members fell silent. Their eyes widened and their jaws dropped in disbelief. There was no mistaking the image. It was real. An alien diplomat from the Pecan race, known for their razor-sharp intellect and unshakable confidence, was the first to speak. His voice trembled slightly, though he tried to hide it. This cannot be true," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "How can a species that has barely begun to leave its home planet manage to achieve something this profound?" The room buzzed with nervous chatter as more representatives voiced their confusion and disbelief. The Xoltar, a species known for their fearsome warriors, sat frozen, their many eyes blinking in unison, unable to process the information. "Impossible," another council member from the Tivarn species said, her voice quivering. "The Gorath is one of the most dangerous creatures in the known galaxy. We've sent entire fleets to subdue it, yet we've only met failure. And now, a human has done what no one else could." The murmurs grew louder as diplomats exchanged worried glances. The fact that humanity, a relatively young species compared to the ancient civilizations present, had achieved this victory sent shockwaves through the council. They had long considered themselves the superior races of the galaxy, with their advanced technologies, centuries of experience, and military might. But this event challenged everything they believed in. The Pecan representative, still struggling to understand the gravity of the situation, turned to the Zorath delegation, known for their immense size and physical strength. "Do you believe it?" he asked. "Can we really allow such a species to rise?" The Zorath, who had been silent until now, finally spoke, their deep voice rumbling like thunder. "They have the power to tame the untamable. Perhaps we should be concerned." As the council continued to discuss the implications of the humans' victory, there was a growing division among the alien races. Some, like the Zorath, feared humanity's potential. Others, however, began to view them in a different light. For the first time in centuries, the council members were divided, no longer united in their arrogance. "The humans are no longer an insignificant species," said one of the higher-ranking members of the council, a representative of the ancient Vel-Nera race. Her eyes gleamed with a sharp, calculating intelligence. "They have shown that they possess not only the technological prowess we've always attributed to the advanced species of the galaxy, but they also have something more. They have a spirit, a resilience that may make them a force to be reckoned with." The council room fell silent at her words. For the first time, an alien species saw humanity as more than just a potential threat. They saw them as something else, something that could change the balance of power. In a quiet corner of the room, Captain John stood, watching the broadcast from Earth. His heart raced as he listened to the conversation unfolding within the council. He had no idea what they were saying, but he could guess. He knew that the alien races were frightened. They were beginning to realize that their belief in their own superiority was no longer a guarantee. Humanity had proven that it could rise above the limitations that others had imposed on them. The scene shifted back to Earth, where Captain John stood before the Galactic Council, the powerful assembly of species that now watched him with both awe and fear. As his image flickered on the large screen, he addressed them directly, his voice steady and confident. "We are not here to bow to oppression," Captain John began, his words resonating through the council chambers. "We are not here to submit to those who believe they are above us. Humanity will never be silenced. We have proven that we can overcome the impossible, that we can fight against forces stronger than us, and that we will never back down." He paused, allowing his words to sink in. Gorath was a challenge, but it was only a symbol of what humanity can achieve. We don't give up. We don't surrender. And we will never stop pushing forward, no matter what obstacles we face. The message was clear. Captain John's words echoed across the galaxy, resonating with the council members. Some looked at him with fear in their eyes, while others, the more enlightened ones, looked at him with respect. Humanity had earned their place in the galaxy, not by conquering others, but by proving that they could conquer themselves. They had faced the ultimate test and emerged victorious. The humans were no longer just a species of survivors. They were now a species of leaders, warriors, and thinkers. And the galaxy was watching. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council began to reconsider their views on humanity. Some feared the humans, unsure of what this new power meant. Others saw the humans as a new hope, a species that could change the course of galactic history. Many of the council members began to see humans as potential allies, not enemies. The realization that humanity could tame the greatest predator in the galaxy opened up new possibilities. Soon, other alien races began to approach humanity for help. They needed assistance in dealing with their own monstrous threats, creatures, and forces that had long been beyond their control. They had seen what Captain John had done, and they wanted to learn from him. They wanted humanity's strength, its resilience, and its willingness to fight against impossible odds. The story had only just begun. What started as a mission to tame a single beast had turned into a galactic shift, a new era for humanity. No longer would they be seen as a primitive species, no longer would they be ignored or underestimated. The galaxy was about to change forever, and humanity was at the center of it all. Captain John had proven that humans could do the impossible, and now, the rest of the galaxy would have to reckon with the consequences. The age of human dominance was just beginning. A new alien threat loomed over the galaxy, and it was unlike anything the Galactic Council had ever faced. The very foundation of their power was now in jeopardy. A dark, imposing force had emerged, one far stronger and more dangerous than any enemy they had encountered before. The Council's finest warriors, their fleets, and their most advanced technologies had proven ineffective against this new threat. The enemy's power was overwhelming, and no species could stand up to them alone. Panic spread among the council members as they scrambled to find a solution. It was in this moment of desperation that the Galactic Council turned to the humans, who had recently made an unprecedented mark on the galaxy by taming Gorath, the apex predator of the hostile planet. The Council had been hesitant about humanity's potential, viewing them as a species too young and too primitive to contend with the great powers of the galaxy. But now, faced with a threat that could annihilate them all, they had no choice but to seek out the humans. Captain John stood at the front of the room, his face a mixture of determination and resolve. His team had become the stuff of legends, known throughout the galaxy for their bravery and ability to confront the impossible. Gorath, once an enemy of humanity, had now become their greatest asset. The beast, tamed by Captain John, had proven itself as a formidable ally, its power and strength something no one could deny. The enemy force was unlike any the humans had faced before. Their ships were massive, their weapons destructive, and their tactics cunning. They came from a distant galaxy, and their mission was clear: to conquer and dominate all who stood in their path. No species was spared, and now they had set their sights on the human-occupied sectors. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and the humans were humanity's last hope. With little time to prepare, Captain John and his team mobilized quickly. Using the advanced technology they had developed, including cloaking devices, AI-guided drones, and energy shields, they prepared for what would be their most difficult mission yet. But it wasn't just their technology that would make the difference. It was their courage, their unity, and their willingness to face the impossible. The battle began with a deafening roar as the enemy fleet entered human space, their warships dropping out of hyperspace with destructive force. The humans, though vastly outnumbered, stood firm, their ships lined up in a defensive formation. Captain John and his team led the charge, Gorath by their side, roaring with fury as they approached the enemy. The beast was no longer just a savage animal. It was a weapon, one that had been honed and trained by Captain John himself. The scene was chaos. Explosions lit up the sky as energy weapons fired, and the sounds of battle filled the air. Ships collided, and the heavens themselves seemed to shake with the fury of the fight. The humans, using their superior strategy and the power of Gorath, fought with unmatched determination. Their ships were agile, weaving through the enemy fire, using the advanced tech to stay one step ahead. But it was clear that the enemy was not going to go down easily. As the battle raged on, Captain John knew that they couldn't rely solely on technology. They needed to think outside the box. The humans had faced impossible odds before and had always come out on top. They had learned to adapt, to fight with everything they had, and they weren't about to stop now. In the heart of the battle, Captain John gave the order to launch the final phase of their plan. With Gorath leading the charge, the humans unleashed their most devastating weapon, a combination of brute strength and technological mastery. The creature, once an uncontrollable force, now fought alongside the humans with precision, tearing through the enemy lines. The battle shifted as the tide turned in favor of the humans. It was a fierce struggle, but with each strike, the humans and their mighty beast began to push the invaders back. Captain John stood at the helm, watching as the enemy fleet began to falter. His mind raced, calculating the next move, while his heart remained steady. He had fought many battles in his life, but this one was different. This battle wasn't just about victory. It was about securing humanity's place in the galaxy. The final moments of the battle were a blur of action. The enemy fleet, now heavily damaged and disoriented, tried to regroup, but it was too late. The humans, led by Captain John and Gorath, closed in for the final strike. The enemy flagship, the heart of their fleet, was the last to fall. With a single, well-placed attack, it was destroyed in a brilliant explosion, signaling the end of the battle. The humans had won. As the last remnants of the enemy fleet were scattered across the void, Captain John stood tall, surveying the battlefield. The sky above was filled with the wreckage of the enemy ships, a testament to the strength and determination of humanity. The battle had been hard-fought, but it was a decisive victory. The humans had not only survived, but had proven that they were a force to be reckoned with. The Galactic Council, who had once viewed humanity with doubt and suspicion, now looked upon them with respect. They had faced the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known and had emerged victorious. Captain John, standing at the forefront, had led humanity to a new era. No longer would they be seen as a weak species. No longer would they be underestimated. As the humans celebrated their hard-earned victory, Captain John reflected on what they had accomplished. This battle had been more than just a military triumph. It had been a symbol of humanity's resilience, adaptability, and spirit. They had faced overwhelming odds and had come out on top, not through brute force alone, but through ingenuity, courage, and unity. Humanity had earned its place in the galaxy, and the rest of the universe now knew it. The days of humans being seen as insignificant or weak were over. They had proven that they were a force to be reckoned with, a species capable of facing any challenge, no matter how insurmountable it seemed. The battle had ended, but the real story was just beginning. The humans had secured their place as leaders in the galaxy, and the future was theirs to shape. Captain John knew that this victory was only the beginning of a new era, one where humanity would stand tall and proud among the stars. As he looked out over the battlefield, the message was clear. Humanity was no longer a species on the fringes of the galaxy. They were here to stay, and they would continue to fight, adapt, and triumph against all odds. The galaxy would never be the same again, and the humans had secured their legacy as one of the greatest species to ever walk the stars.